back to the Daily Grind. Thanks for checking out the channel. Make sure to hit subscribe if you're new and hit thumbs up if you're not a baby back pickle biting bitch boy, cause you know what time it is. It's full time.
MMA.
While doing press for UFC 218, UFC President Dana White fielded questions about the Diaz brothers and their MMA futures and their possible returns to the octagon, as they've both been out for over a year, but we've had recent rumors lately about Nate Diaz versus Tyron Woodley and stuff like that, so people were asking Dana White pretty much what's going on with the Diaz brothers, and it was interesting to me because he was kind of being asked about Nate Diaz versus Tyron Woodley, and when they asked him, do you think like Nate will ever fight again, he came out of nowhere and said, I don't think Nick will. You know, and the question, if I'm remembering correctly, which I'm pretty sure I am because it fucking stood out to me, he was being asked about Nate fighting again, and he said, I don't think Nick will, which is what this video is about. Nick Diaz fighting again. Now Nate Diaz, he probably will, even if it's only the Conor McGregor trilogy fight. We will probably see Nate Diaz at least one more time in the octagon, but the Diaz brothers have outgrown the sport, I want to say. I mean, these guys don't need to fight. They don't need to get punched in the face. Neither one of the Diaz brothers. They can literally show up and, you know, just show up to a fucking bar or a club or a, you know, events. They get paid for showings at this point. Also, they've got their own weed strands. I just seen a fucking picture recently with Nate Diaz holding up like hella pounds of like their own weed strain. So the Diaz brothers are good. As much as we want to see them fight, they don't need to fight. They don't need to go through the grueling process of what it takes to actually be a professional MMA fighter, training different disciplines. They don't have the same hunger they once had. Keyword need and hunger there, because the Diaz brothers got into this literally because they were hungry. At least Nate, he got in, you know, they started doing jiu-jitsu lessons because the coach said, hey, you come and do jiu-jitsu lessons with us, I'll buy you lunch. And you know, so these are two dudes that actually needed to fight to pay their bills. They fought all around the world before Conor McGregor. Before that, they've had their back and forth with the UFC and issues with the UFC contract disputes. So right now they feel like they're worth as much as ever, and they got bargaining power. So if you're not going to pay them 15 million, 10 million, some way, somehow, then they're probably not going to fight again, because they remember what it was like when they thought they deserved to be paid more, and they had no bargaining power, so it was either the UFC's way or the highway. These guys have had their fucking rough patches with the UFC, so you got to kind of see where they're coming from with these contract disputes. Now, as far as Nick Diaz, he's fought some of the best guys in the world. Nick Diaz was a guy who fought Anderson Silva, George St. Pierre, BJ Penn, Carlos Condit, but he hasn't been able to fight due to USADA violations recently. Most recently, it was a USADA violation, and it had nothing to do with even weed this time. I mean, he was suspended for like 5 years due to like a fucking weed violation when he fought Anderson Silva, which was overturned when we all fucking went and signed them petition signatures to get it overturned, because it was unjust that Nick Diaz was going to be out for 5 years for marijuana, and then he still hasn't fought since then. Even though the suspension was overturned and lightened and all of that shit, he's been suspended by USADA again, most recently due to whereabouts failures, which is USADA shows up to drug test you and you're not where you said you were going to be, because UFC fighters have to tell the USADA where they're going to be for like fucking 3 months in advance, 2 months in advance, every day, every hour, for the random drug testing program. And somebody like a Nick Diaz who gets paid to show up places, well, if I think, you know, I'm going to be at this fucking club to make $10,000 just to show up, and then the event gets canceled, or then I get a fucking another gig booked, or then I get fucking high because I got high. You know what I'm saying? It's gonna be hard for the Diaz brothers to literally know, Nick Diaz particularly in this case, to know exactly where he's gonna be every minute of every day, and have to report it every time something changes, and being a pothead does not help that shit. Trust me. And not even to mention the level of difficulty, whether it's hard or not. These dudes probably, Nick Diaz doesn't like USADA. They don't like the fucking guidelines of having to report every single place they're gonna be. I mean, he's posted a video when they like tried to wake him up at like 4 in the morning. He was like, yo, I just came from like a club signing, you know, getting some money pretty much, and now I'm gonna be training tomorrow, but it's 4 in the morning and I got USADA at my door, and they're like, sorry Nick, we've got to come in. And he's like, fuck you guys, you're not coming in. They're like, sorry, we've got to, or we're gonna fail you. And he's like, well, fuck it, come on up, but this is bullshit. So Nick Diaz Nick Diaz in the UFC, the Diaz brothers in the UFC, who knows what's going to happen between them, if we'll see either Diaz brother back. In my assumption, I do think we will see Nate Diaz back at least one more time. Hopefully, it might only be for the Conor McGregor trilogy, but it's not the old days with the Diaz brothers no more. These aren't the same guys, as I said, who need to fight because they're desperate to make a living anymore. Which brings us to Nate Diaz, who beat Conor McGregor, the MMA golden child, and won the lottery pretty much. I mean, he made a lot of money off the pay-per-views for sure in the rematch. I'm not sure if Nate Diaz really even got pay-per-views in the first fight, because he took the fight on short notice and nobody expected him. He wasn't supposed to beat Conor McGregor on that fight. Conor McGregor's team, if I'm not mistaken, chose Nate Diaz. I do remember his coach came out and, you know, out of all the possible replacement opponents, his coach did come out and say if we could pick a fighter, hand make a file stylistically for Conor to fight, it would be like Nate Diaz, the perfect matchup for Conor. But Nate Diaz still came out, and I'm not surprised, motherfucker. As we all know, got the job done in the first fight, and then of course got pay-per-views in the second fight. So Nate Diaz made more money probably in his, honestly, I mean, it's interesting. I don't have all the fucking numbers here to do the math, but it would be interesting to see. I wouldn't be surprised if Nate Diaz made more money in his last two Conor McGregor fights than he did in his entire UFC career before that, because as much of a draw as they felt like they were, because Nate Diaz said that to get the Conor fight, we know who's the real money fight, motherfucker. It's me. You know what I'm saying? So before, even though he felt like he was the real money fight, he wasn't getting paid like it, and now they are, because Nate Diaz kind of has the UFC by the balls with that win over Conor McGregor. Everybody wants to see Nate Diaz back, not just the hardcore fans. I'm talking about the brothers, the sisters, the grandmas, the moms, the dads, the casual fans, the general public, everybody, the kids, everybody wants to see Conor vs. Nate Diaz 3 no matter what. Even if you feel like it's taking too long to happen, doesn't matter. It's kind of like fucking Floyd Mayweather, Manny Pacquiao. No matter how long it takes to make Conor McGregor Nate Diaz 3, people are still going to want to see it. So that being said, I've did enough rambling here about the Diaz brothers and their possible return to MMA. Nick Diaz might not ever fight again, Dana White's saying, and Nate Diaz, who knows? I mean, we've heard his demands for anybody. It doesn't matter who it is. Tony Ferguson, Tyron Woodley, he wants $15 million. Conor, or just give him Conor McGregor with some pay-per-view points, and I'm sure that'd be good too. But as far as just seeing the Diaz brothers back in the, you know, climbing the contender ladder to try and be a champion and just fighting whoever, whenever, there's no reason to really expect that anymore. These dudes are fucking living legends as far as I'm concerned at this point. I mean, it's kind of like the Donald Cerrone thing, you know what I'm saying? As much as you love the fight game, you've already proved yourself, and you've got opportunities outside of it. You don't got to get punched in the face anymore. You can fucking go do, in Donald Cerrone's case, he can go do acting or whatever, hunting or whatever he wants to do. Nick Diaz can go party, you know, go to parties and show up at clubs and get paid to do that, or grow his own weed strains. You know, these guys can do stuff that sounds a lot funner than getting punched in the face and going the grueling fucking training, getting punched in the face in training, and then getting punched in the face in fight camp, and then getting punched in the face in the fight, and then healing up so you can get punched in the face some more. And that's making it sound good, actually, because that's not counting any of the kicks or submissions or getting slammed or any of that shit. So with that being said, man, it is what it is. Let the full-time family know what the fuck you tabbing at in the comments, and put some respect on the Diaz brothers' name. I'm out.
Da 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 da. It's the motherfucking D-O-double-G.